Howdy folks, hello and welcome. My name is CalebDMTG and I am here to record a M20 constructed set overview. Now, M20, in terms of core sets, it's been pretty juicy. It's been pretty top tier. It's rare for a core set to shake up standard this much. Usually it doesn't happen very often. I think the last time we saw it happening on this level was maybe when the Titans were printed. And maybe not even then. We've seen cards impacting Modern and Legacy as well. We've seen M20 cards showing up in those older formats, and that's very exciting for me. So I'm going to be going through most of M20, well, the cards that are relevant for Constructed anyway, and I'm not even going to be able to get to all of them, because there's a lot of cards that have been showing up. But I'm going to do my best. I've got a lot of deck lists I'm going to show you folks, some nice tech. Some of it's mine, a lot of it's not. Going to a lot of other content creators for some sweet deck lists that have been doing well. Things have been doing well on the ladder. Things that have been 5-0ing on Moto. Things that are important to be tracking, to be following. But before I do that, before I go into all of that, I have got a short little announcement to make. This video, folks.
Listen up, everybody. I have some news.
This video is sponsored. Yeah! Oh my god. So what this pillowcase with a dollar insignia is implying is that this video is sponsored by a little company known as Wizards of the Coast. So that's very, very exciting for me. That's naturally quite exciting for me. It's a bit of legitimacy that I would not have imagined however many years ago when I first started streaming full time. So that's awesome. Don't let anybody say that Wizards doesn't support their content creators, because I mean, just think about me holding this pillowcase. Oh, to celebrate this pillowcase. I want to share it. I want to share it around a little bit, spread the love. I want to do a giveaway, and since this video is an M20 video, it's a related video, I'm gonna be giving away some boxes of M20. So the way that it'll work, and the full rules will be at the end. The way that it'll work, just post in the comments, say your favorite M20 card, say why it's your favorite M20 card, and then I'll handpick 3 lucky winners. Maybe I'll have someone to help me with that, so it's like less just me picking people. But I'm gonna pick 3 lucky winners, and I'll ping them here on YouTube, and you can email me, and we can figure out your address and all of that. I'm obviously not going to use your address for anything fishy. Just want to send you a box of M20. I've done a lot of giveaways on my stream. I feel like I'm talking too much. The official rules are going to be at the end. The main important ones are, this is a Caleb D run giveaway, so all the legal responsibilities and everything, that's all on me. It's not on YouTube. It's not on Wizards. And the other important thing is that I'm obviously not going to break the law to send someone an M20 box, right? So if you live in a country that the United States has sanctions against, I'm not gonna send you a box of M20. Sorry to all my viewers in North Korea. That unfortunately will not happen. But pretty much everybody else, you are eligible to win this. Anyway, let's get into some cards. Right, there's some real juicy cards in M20, and we're gonna start with the reprints, and we're gonna build. We're gonna build and hype. The first one that I want to talk about is God's Willing. So God's Willing is a card that has shown up in blue-white heroic decks of the past in order to protect a really important threat to force it through the opposing removal. And God's Willing's a really good one because you also get that little bit of scry, so you're less likely to flood out. You can keep the gas flowing, and then you can also use it as evasion. If your opponent's got, say, like a Lyra holding your team down, give a creature pro-white, attack, maybe get in lethal, that sort of thing. It's a pretty exciting card, and there's a deck in Standard that can use it, and that's this Feather the Redeemed deck. Now, this deck is just playing straight red-white. I've seen lists going into Naya recently, but I think it's quite good. This is a 5-0 list from Moto, Magic the Gathering Online, and if you've got some keen eyes, you'll also notice another M20 card here, and that is Temple of Triumph. The Temples saw a ton of play last time around. They saw a ton of play. They saw play in monocolor decks that just wanted a little bit of scry, just wanted to make sure that they could hit their land drops and chain stuff together in the early turns while also not flooding out quite as badly in the late game. And they saw a lot of play just as like general fixing and whatnot. They're really, really good cards. They still see a little bit of play in Modern. Combo decks that don't want to invest too many cards into filtering, that can't afford to play like all filtering because they need, they also need their deck to work, but still want a little bit of extra selection. So Goryo's Vengeance decks have been known to play Temples, and Ad Nauseam has been known to play Temples in Modern. So it's good enough for Modern. It's probably good enough for Standard. These lands are great, and it's exciting to see them back. These lands are especially good with Growth Spiral, too. The odds are, if you play a turn 2 Growth Spiral and put a land into play, you don't really care if it comes into play tapped. Moving on, I want to talk about another couple of reprints, Leyline of the Void and Grafdigger's Cage. Another Leyline that got reprinted is pretty big, too, the Leyline of Sanctity, but I want to talk about Leyline of the Void specifically. I did get to preview this card. Thanks again, Wizards. And it is quite the important reprint. In Standard, it's not that big of a deal because there's a huge deck building cost to including Leylines. You might want to run 4 to increase the chance that it's in your opener, so it takes up a lot of your sideboard slots. And then if you draw it naturally, it might not come down in time. And so the real benefit of it in M20 is that it's much, much needed to reprint for those older formats. Before, Modern or Legacy players wanted to play the card, they had to shell out like $200 for a playset. Now it's much closer to like a $64 for a playset if they want to use the M20 edition. So that's awesome. That is super cool. And that's if you're gonna do a set that has like a certain number of reprints, doing some that like very specifically throw a bone to people trying to play those older formats, well, we appreciate it.
You a genius. I appreciate you.
I'm just gonna speak for all Eternal players everywhere. We all appreciate it. People that play Eternal formats. Yeah, that's great. Grafdigger's Cage is not a card that really needed a reprint for price reasons, but it is a more exciting card to have printed into Standard. You can play any number of the board, and it's still going to be effective because it's costed so aggressively. So you keep a hand that doesn't have a Grafdigger's Cage, and then you draw it, and you're like, oh, well, I play this for 1 mana. It's almost free, right? And it's very easy to fit into your curve. And you can play 1 to 4, and it's not a big deal. Whereas with Leyline, you really want it in your opener, so you're probably playing 3 or 4. If Grafdigger's Cage sees a lot of play, then red players might have to retool their lists a bit, because it's especially brutal against Experimental Frenzy. If the mono-red player plays Experimental Frenzy and then you play a Cage, they're almost locked out of the game, right? They have to like spend a turn sacrificing their Frenzy before they can start playing cards again. It's pretty exciting, pretty sweet. Nice little answer there. The next reprint that I want to talk about is Goblin Ringleader. Now, this is my Ringleader list for Modern. I'm still working on it. I'm still tweaking it. But Goblins has shown up with some 5-0s. Goblins has been performing. Goblins showed up with a 5-0 with just Goblin Matron getting reprinted, and now we have a Ringleader as well. And for the first time in Modern, we can do something that's more akin to what Goblins has been doing in Legacy, which is chaining together a bunch of card advantage goblins, fighting through like almost any number of sweepers, almost any amount of disruption. Because you have so much card advantage between 4 Goblin Matrons, 4 Ringleaders. You got Vials spitting them all into play. You got cost reducers. You got this sweet toolbox for Matron. You're not killing people on turn 3, but your late game should be better than most other decks. So I am still working on this list. The cards I'm least sure of are the 2 Frog Tosser banners. I'm pretty sure they should be a 4th copy of Mog War Marshal and a 3rd copy of Goblin War Chief right now. Those cards have been kind of overperforming for me, and I haven't really popped off with the Frog Tossers yet. I was just like testing them. But this is the list that I will be playing in the Modern Super League that airs on Twitch. So at twitch.tv/magic, happens every Tuesday. Playing this week. I have not played my matches yet, so hopefully I don't let the Goblin Tribe down. But I am slotted to pilot it. Currently, the Hagak deck has been banned, yes! Which means we no longer need to sideboard 4 Leylines, which is why I've got 4 Grafdigger's Cage in the sideboard. Goblins is very, very good at beating other creature decks in the late game and beating control decks in the late game. It's not necessarily great at beating fast combo decks. So what you want to do with your Goblin deck sideboard is tool it against whatever fast combo deck is the most prevalent. And right now that's Neoform, so that's why we're playing 4 Grafdigger's Cage and the Thoughtseizes. And Chalice of the Void can come down on 0 to stop them from playing Pacts. But Chalice is mostly there for Phoenix-type decks that really, really care about playing a lot of 1-drop spells. Note that Chalice of the Void is actually quite good with Cavern of Souls, so you can still play your 1-mana goblins through your own Chalice on 1. So that's it for reprints that are having a constructed impact, but that's still not too shabby. Not too shabby, right? It's pretty rare for reprints to actually impact older formats like that. I don't know if we have an example of a reprint actually printing something into Modern in that way. Maybe Scavenging Ooze. Maybe the Scavenging Ooze reprint is a good example. We'll see if Goblin Ringleader has the same impact long term that Scavenging Ooze has had on Modern, right? Kind of exciting. All right, we're gonna start talking about them new cards now. And first, I want to start with Sorin, because oh my God, is this card powerful? Ah, it's absurdly powerful. Sorin, the upticks are both great. They're both great. They're very good in a tribal deck, right? You can give something Death Touch and Lifelink, put a 1/1 counter on it if it's a vampire. Get in there, just like slowly grow a creature while also making it difficult for the opponent to race. Excellent. Then the Sacrifice ability, dome something for 3 damage, gain 3 life, also really good. Maybe you're only doing this in the very late game when you just need to like kill the opponent. Maybe they're at 6 life. You just want to spend a couple turns, a couple ticks, killing them once they've managed to like stabilize. Maybe you want to clear their mana dorks to like buy time to actually attack them, make sure that they don't turbo out of fastness, something along those lines. There's a lot of flexibility there, and it's good. You can even like clear off opposing planeswalkers. Oh my God, it's so good. And you can build your deck around it to varying degrees too, like maybe include more creatures that you don't mind sacrificing, that sort of thing. And finally, the downtick. The downtick's very exciting. I've been messing around with downticking and putting Morphon into play in Modern and Legacy to varying degrees of success, and then naming Sliver or Dragon and dumping a bunch of Durfers into play. And it's very fun. It's not really competitive. Most of this video will be talking about competitive combos, but I just wanted to say, that's very fun. Anyway, the main card that people have been putting into play in Standard is a Champion of Dusk, which is excellent, because it means you can go turn 1, 1-drop, turn 2, 1-drop, 1-drop, turn 3, Sorin downtick, put Champion of Dusk into play, draw 4 cards, and have a 4/4 out. What? That's ridiculous. That's a stupid good curve, and it's a really good nut draw that the deck has now. The other 5-drop vampire in Standard that people have been putting into play is Vona, Butcher of Magon, and that's a good one. It's a pretty good one. I've seen it in a lot of sideboards, and as you see here in Huey Jensen's take on the deck, it is showing up in the sideboard there. Huey got the #1 slot on the Mythic ladder playing this deck, and he is one of the best players in the world, so certainly worth a look. Certainly worth a look-see. I've seen other takes on the deck. I've played a few different takes on the deck. I think the main difference in people's different approaches to the deck is really what kind of like complementary removal you want to be playing. So here, Huey's playing Mortify, which is like a versatile card, kills creatures, kills legends, unlike Cast Down, and also hits enchantments. So he's gonna have a little bit more game against enchantment-based combo decks, like Wilderness Reclamation. I had some luck with Conclave Tribunal. I like the flexibility of the casting cost, and then it also can hit Planeswalkers if it needs to. Not too shabby. A lot of the deck is built to be very similar to like the White Weenie deck, and White Weenie always played that card, so that's why my mind first jumped to it. But it's not necessarily better than other options. Most recently, I've seen the more aggressive lists running Oath of Kaya, since that's not only a removal spell, but it can also go face. When you factor in that with the Sorin Sacrifice ability, that adds up to a lot of reach for a white-black creature deck, huh? Next up, Scapeshift will only be around for a few more months, but it finally found a friend with Field of the Dead. So this is a Gateshift Core Set 2020 Standard deck made by the great Jim Davis. Jim Davis and me go way back. We played each other on the Star City series way back in the day. We're both in like a similar place where we never really like broke out on the Pro Tour level. We played a few Pro Tours, but we always like kind of found our home on the cash tournament circuits within content creation and that sort of thing. He's a fellow streamer. You can check out his stream at JimDavisMTG. So twitch.tv/JimDavisMTG. JimDavisMTG. Anyway, he's good. Check him out. This deck is sweet. So Scapeshift fits pretty well into the Gate deck anyway, because that deck already wants to play like a ton of lands, and a ton of different kinds of lands as well. So the option to scape shift for Field of the Dead is pretty easy, and scape shift has already shown up in some Gates decks to take advantage of Guild Summit, the draw engine there. So you can go turn 3 Guild Summit, turn 4 scape shift, draw 4 cards, things like that. You're probably not doing that line specifically, but you could, you know. And then scape shift also gives you the option of tutoring up a pile of Plaza of Harmonies against aggro, gain a bunch of life, that sort of thing. So this deck isn't just using Field of the Dead as the new M20 card, it's also using Golos, Tireless Pilgrim. Now activating Golos as a mana sink in the late game, pretty zesty. Pretty zesty. If you look to the sideboard, there is yet one more M20 card, and that is Chandra, Awakened Inferno. Now Chandra got a lot of hype going into this format. Chandra got a ton of hype. Everyone was like very, very excited about this card. But it's not as good as it would be in other formats for a few different reasons. One, the spell can't be countered. Not a lot of counter spells going around. 3-mana Teferi kind of removed a lot of counters from the format. People just like are playing a lot more sorcery speed magic than they usually would. So that's less good. 2, there's a lot of elementals running around. M20 has been so successful that Elemental Tribal is a deck, and so Chandra's downtick isn't very good because it doesn't actually kill a lot of the creature decks that you would want it to be an effective sweeper against. So in another format, Chandra Awakened Inferno would probably be quite strong, but here I think it makes a lot of sense as strictly a sideboard card, which is where Jim Davis has put it. It is funny to see the Chandra emblems against the taking turns decks, right? Against the Wilderness Reclamation decks that take a bunch of turns in a row. And they have a couple of Chandra emblems, and so they take another turn and lose 2, and they like figure out how to gain life or kill the opponent before they die. I don't know. It makes it a lot more fun. Next up, this is another Scape Shift shell. This is a CalebDMTG creation. This is one of my own. I streamed this and had an absolute blast with it. Very explosive. I don't know if this shell necessarily is especially competitive, though we did have a pretty good win rate with it. But it is a lot of fun, and there's definitely some potential there, right? So different elements of this deck might show up in other like better decks later down the line. Or maybe this deck is actually good because, like I said, we were winning with it. So so Scape Shift isn't an M20 card, but Lotus Field is. So what we're trying to do here is play Blood Sun on turn 3, and then turn 4 play Scape Shift and get quad Lotus Field. And the way that Blood Sun works is the Lotus Field will not have the comes to play sacrifice 2 lands ability, but it will still tap for 3 mana. So Blood Sun into Lotus Field is quite the combo. It means that if you get to curve Blood Sun into Scape Shift, assuming you haven't drawn any Lotus Fields, you're going to have 13 mana on turn 5. Which means that you can use one of the deck's finales. Finale of Revelation, you can draw 10 cards and then like still generate mana. You can use Finale of Revelation as an actual ritual in this deck. You can run out Zakama also as a ritual, have a pile of mana for Zakama's abilities, or just playing more things. And then Finale of Devastation to go get Zetalpa, not too shabby. Not too shabby indeed. That's attacking for a lot of double striking damage. Hit someone for like 28. The cool thing, when I originally made this deck, I only had Zakama as the finale target of choice. I had a couple of other like toolboxy type creatures, but someone suggested Zetalpa for when the opponent was at more than 20 life. Zakama can smack someone for 20 from that situation, but if someone's at like 25 or something, it's a little bit harder. Zetalpa gets there, and it also has flying to boot, so it's much harder to block some of the damage and not die. Massacre Girl is there for fighting aggro decks. It's another Finale of Devastation tutor. If you draw the Massacre Girl naturally, the only way to play it is off of Lotus Field, but the whole deck is designed to find Lotus Field and put it into play, so that shouldn't be that hard. One other M20 card that's in this pool is Tail's End. So Tail's End has impressed me a lot. It's pretty good at countering opposing Planeswalkers, which is nice. And then in this deck, it can also stifle the Lotus Field comes into play ability. So you play your Lotus Field, the trigger goes on the stack, you Tail's End it, now you don't have to sack 2 lands. So you're spending a card to do that, but you're also ramping, so it's like, not bad. It's not bad at all. One thing that impressed me when I was playing out this deck that I didn't expect to impress me was that just playing Blood Sun on turn 3 and then just dropping a Lotus Field the next turn generated a lot of mana. That was a nice boost of mana. That was it's part of what made the deck feel competitive to me, and I think Blood Sun plus Lotus Field might show up in decks that aren't playing Scape Shift. I think that might have some longevity to it. It might show up in other lists. Worth keeping an eye on. I thought it was a little wild. I thought it was a little crazy when I was putting the deck together. I didn't expect to win a lot, and then I won a lot. So give it a shot. Give it a. Don't sleep on it, is what I'm getting at. Next up, I want to talk about Elementals. So a lot of people have been talking about Risen Reef as potentially the best card of the set, and they might be right. Risen Reef's really, really good. It's especially good in multiples, right? It just pops off. By itself, it's a 3-mana Coiling Oracle, nothing that impressive, but it's a draw engine that gets around Narset, and there's enough Elementals in the format that are playable that it's becoming like the core of a lot of different decks. A lot of very different explosive decks. So the list that I've got here for Elementals, this is a VTCLA special. You can find him on Twitter at VTCLA1. This was his first trophy deck of the season. I think this list is very good. I've seen a lot of decks similar to it. Basically, what he's trying to do here is use these very explosive ramp cards to dump Nissa into play. And then you've got Flood of Tears there to as like kind of a stopgap to like stop whatever it is the opponent's doing. Note that Flood of Tears does not bounce your Nissa animated lands. So if you get a Nissa down on turn 3, animate a few lands, play a Flood of Tears, you still have some 3/3s. You are still beating down. You still have that value in play. So it's a nice combination of cards, a lot of nice pressure. Nissa also gives you that mana, that boosted mana, to play the Flood of Tears and then have mana to replay your cards, right? You see the Omniscience in this deck. Omniscience and Flood of Tears is a pretty sweet combo. I've seen decks that are more focused around that combo. If you want to try and full combo, you can do that. You can play more copies of Omniscience. You can play Tamiyo to rebuy the Flood of Tears, right? So Flood of Tears bounces the Tamiyo, you replay the Tamiyo, you bounce the Flood of Tears. The Flood of Tears puts Omniscience into play. You get the idea. It's a cycle. So then if you have a card that draws a card, like say a Risen Reef per chance, you can just go through your whole deck that way. Or I guess Omnath would ping the opponent infinitely. Might be a little cleaner of a kill. I was testing out a build that was using Jace as the win condition, which is pretty miserable. The 1 in blue Jace, that one, it's kind of a miserable win condition because you basically have to draw the entire deck in order to kill someone with it. So hopefully they concede, but if they don't concede, there's a lot of clicking involved. So Omnath might make a better win condition there. Omnath, another M20 card. I was not sure if it was going to see play. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell when you've got these tri-colored legendary cards that appear to be designed for EDH. It's really hard to tell if they're going to make an impact on Standard, but I'm not surprised that they are, right? There's a lot of text on these cards. There's a lot of text on this cycle of cards. The other one that I've seen play is the Junk one. Has seen a little bit of play, but I'm not sure if it's competitive, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Omnath, on the other hand, works really, really well in this Elemental shell with Risen Reef. Leafkin Druid is a 2-mana mana dork. 2-mana mana dork's not embarrassing at all in this format. There's a lot of decks that are playing them. This one's an 0/3, so it can also like block an early Vampire, get some blocks in before it starts turboing things out. The last Elemental of the deck. Oh, I should mention the sideboard, because we got Veil of Summer there. There's another M20 card, and Cerulean Drake, yet another M20 card, and Fry. So we're going to talk about a little bit more about those later, but I want to point them out because they are seeing a lot of play, and they are quite good. All right, the last Elemental. The last Elemental in this deck is a Cavalier of Thorns, and the Cavalier cycle is pretty good. It's a pretty good cycle. They all have a lot of text on them. In Limited, they're much easier to answer than the gods were. There's even some common removal spells that can take them off the board, and when they die, they stay dead. So it's a lot more pleasant of a Limited experience than just like, oh, my opponent played a god, and now I lose to the god. The Cavaliers are good enough that they're worth building around in Limited, and they have that strong presence. But then the opponent has access to a little bit of counterplay. Nice. Good job, Wizards. This is better. I would much prefer this. And they're costed powerfully enough to see constructed play. I've played against all of the Cavaliers in Standard at various points in time. Not all of them are necessarily good enough, but they all have enough text. They all have enough abilities that seeing them pop up here and there is not crazy. The two that have impressed the most are Cavalier of Thorns, which you see here in this Elementals list. Here, it's mostly just a ramp spell and a 5/6 body and an elemental for Risen Reef and Omnath triggers. But in a lot of decks, Cavalier of Thorns is really good at filling up the graveyard for cards like Command the Dreadhorde. So not surprised to see that one showing up in the Sultai lists as well. The other one that I've seen show up is the Black Cavalier.
2 hours later.
Okay, it looks like I don't have a deck list for the Black Cavalier handy, but I have seen it show up in Sultai lists, and I've also seen it show up in red-black lists, similar to the one that I'm going to show you here from Croquis. Now, Croquis is a streamer. My apologies if I am mispronouncing his name, but you can find him at twitch.tv/CROKEYZ, and he does a lot of standard, and he's been messing around with red-black. I don't know, not necessarily mid-range, red-black aggro, I would say, and he has played with the Cavalier a little bit in this deck, was why I was thinking about him. But something that I want to talk about in his deck that I didn't really touch on when I was talking about vampires is Knight of the Ebon Legion. Knight of the Ebon Legion is very, very good. It's a very, very good vampire. It and Sorin are both part of like why vampires are making this big resurgence and why vampires is like probably a tier 1 deck right now. So Knight of the Ebon Legion's got a lot of text on it. It's 1 mana for a 1/2. Every time the opponent takes 4 damage, or not just the opponent, yourself as well, right? So in the vampires deck, you're playing the 2 mana 1/1 where you can pay 4 life to make it indestructible. It means that if you attack with that card and the opponent blocks and you pay 4 life to make it indestructible on your turn, your knights are going to grow, right? In the vampire deck, of course. In this deck, that's you're probably not taking 4 damage yourself on your own turn, but unless like there's a weird Midnight Reaper combat. But it is pretty easy for this deck to deal the opponent 4 damage. Heck, Knight of the Ebon Legion can deal 4 damage. You just put 3 mana into it, it gets +3/+3, deals the opponent 4 damage, and in turn gets a 1/1 counter, grows, becomes harder and harder for the opponent to deal with. It also gains Death Touch, so even if the opponent can block it with multiple creatures, they're going to lose all of those creatures. And it scales very, very well into the late game. So the more lanes you have in play, the more times you can activate it. You can activate it more than 1 time per turn. I think this card would be standard, like a standard powerhouse, even if you could only activate it 1 time per turn. But as it's currently costed, this card's going to continue seeing a ton of play. As you can see here, this isn't even a vampire deck, and it's just good enough. Knight of the Ebon Legion almost makes this style of deck good enough on its very own. Like, right, finally we have a 1-drop that's this workhorse, this power level to make a deck like this work. Also notice in the sideboard, we got Noxious Grasp and Fry. So the sideboard cycle of uncommon cards has been really good. That was printed in M20. A lot of them are great at popping random planeswalkers. Noxious Grasp and Fry in particular have been seeing a lot of play because they hit Teferi in 1 hit. And they also hit problem permanents like Lyra that show up post-board. So if you're playing against an Esper deck and you bring in your Frys and your Noxious Grasps to hit their Teferis and whatnot, and then post-board, they're bringing in Lyra to try and stop you. So now your sideboard cards that you brought in for the main deck are also hitting their sideboard cards. That's a very, very good sideboard card. That's good. That's ideal. That's the old ideal situation. In Legacy, Veil of Summer has been doing work. And it's Julian23 on Twitch, who is one of the most accomplished Legacy Elves players out there, has been using it to great success. I've heard it described as the green Flusterstorm. I haven't seen it cast in Standard yet, but I have seen it showing up in sideboards, some of which we've already looked at today. The card seems great. The card seems really, really good. Like I said, Julian is one of the better Elves players alive. He's one of the most accomplished. And if he's been playing it to good success, and it's probably good enough. And if it's good enough in Legacy, probably good enough in Standard. Now, that's not necessarily the case, right? No, sometimes you have a card that'll show up in Vintage, like Null Rod, that's not necessarily good in Standard because there aren't artifacts or whatever. You get the idea. Sometimes sideboard cards are good in one format, but not good in another. Sometimes Tormod's Crypt is really good in an older format because there's a deck that it hoses, but there isn't a deck that it hoses in Standard, so it doesn't see any play. But I think people will be playing blue and black spells, which means that Veil of Summer is probably going to be good. It's probably going to be good enough. Finally, I want to talk about Marauding Raptor. So, Marauding Raptor is the last one I'm going to do a deep dive on, and it is worth it. It is an excellent, excellent card. Very exciting. It was the first card I saw spoiled that I was like, oh, I'm going to play that one. I'm going to play that one. 2 mana for a 2/3 that's a mana dork, right? It reduces all the cost of your other creatures. That also grows every time it gets to ping a dinosaur. And a lot of your dinosaurs have enraged, so they want to be pinged. They actively want to take damage. You know, turn 2 Marauding Raptor, turn 3 play a Ripjaw Raptor and draw a card. Ripjaw Raptor, which was already seeing play last Standard, you know, before M20, it was already seeing play because it's so good against red aggro. just slots into this perfectly, gives you this beautiful curve. Maybe you want to play a Raptor Hatchling and then attack for 6 on turn 3. Maybe you want to play a Raptor Hatchling and something else and attack for 8. Who knows? Anyway, so I've been messing around with Dinosaurs a lot. Red, Green, Gruul. Some versions playing more Dinosaurs, some playing less. The version that I like a lot right now is a list that just 5-0'd recently on Magic the Gathering Online, piloted by one Boris. We got the list here. So the thing that I like about this is you're playing 4 Commune with Dinosaurs. So the way the deck really functions, the ideal curve is turn 2 Marauding Raptor and then turn 3 Ripjaw Raptor. So if you're playing Commune on turn 1, that dramatically increases the chance of that happening. The other cool thing this list is doing is it's maximizing its ways of giving the Dinosaurs haste. It's playing the 4 Huntmaster, which I've been avoiding. I've been avoiding testing this card, but it looks really good here. The reason I didn't like Huntmaster that much is because you want to play Raptor on turn 2, but like you can't play the Huntmaster after that. So I've been leaning towards Land of Elves because that comes down earlier in the curve. But giving your Dinosaurs haste is super important against all of these turbo mana decks. All the, like, say the Elementals deck that we looked at earlier, all the decks that are like putting out all this fast mana, because you need to race them. You need to kill them real fast before they get rolling, or they're going to play a flood, they're going to bounce your board, they're going to kill you with Nissa, they're going to do all kinds of things. So you need to apply pressure as fast as possible. So playing 4 of the Registar Alpha that gives your Dinosaurs haste, and then playing 4 of this Huntmaster, probably the way to go. I like it a lot. And the other cool thing about this list is that it gets to play quad Rotting Registar. So you're attacking with that one, 7/6 on turn, I don't know, just some incredibly early turn. Love it. Love it. The Rotting Registar also makes Galta way easy to cast. Super easy to cast that card when you have a 7/6 in play. So Rotting Registar is a card that I didn't have many ideas for on how to tool around, how to build it. But I think it fits very well in this deck. And I think this list is where you want to go. The triple Collision Colossus also makes sense. Again, you really need to be bursty. You need to kill your opponents before they get rolling in this current format. And I think that's what this deck does. Now, we don't have a lot of Planeswalkers, right? We don't have a ton of good anti-control cards. But in the sideboard, we see the 3 Duress, you see the Veil of Summers, so we have some ways of interacting with them post-board. Finally, I'm going to go through a list of cards that are good enough to see constructed play, and I have played against them, but they're not quite meta yet. So these are all cards that are worth discussing, but they're not like part of like a tier 1 deck or our archetype or something of that nature yet. Bishop of Wings makes Angel Tribal look kind of exciting. Drawn from Dreams gets around Narset, which is pretty important, and looking at 7 cards and getting 2 of them, that's a lot of cards. So I think it's a solid 1 or 2 of in combo and control decks, and that's where I've been seeing it pop up. Sephira, Sky's Blade, Spectral Sailor, and Empyrean Angel kind of make it look like standard flyers could maybe be a thing, like an off-meta way to attack the format. If you think the meta is weak to 7/7 flyers coming down like before people have the chance to answer them, maybe that's a deck. Empyrean Eagle, in particular, seems like it will be decent in Modern, showing up in blue-white and Bant Spirits. Now, it's worse than the current Lords that those decks are playing, but it might still be a 1 or 2 of and fit in that way. Pulse of Marasa is played a lot in Pauper, could be a sweet sideboard card in Standard. Gaining 4 life, you've got a slower deck, play a Pulse, why not? Something to note about Pulse of Marasa is actually an interesting sideboard card against Reanimator as well. So if Reanimator becomes better in the format, if Burn becomes better in the format, we might start seeing more Pulses. Thunderkin Awakener is not doing anything in Standard, nor did I expect it to, but it is showing up in some Modern brews. Holy Diva has been messing with this card. She's great. You should give her a follow. You should watch her. I've been playing a few copies in Shamans, and to really good effect. I've been rebuying Rage Forger with it, which is pretty powerful. Just having like a hasty shaman is good in that deck. Having something that you can collected company into and attack with on that turn is nice. Season of Growth is showing up in some lists of Naya Feather. I haven't seen it 5/0 on Moto yet. I haven't seen Naya Feather like dominating on Arena, but maybe it is good. Maybe that is the best version. I'm not sure. Icon of Ancestry is a card that got a lot of hype going into this format. I do think it's still good. I've played like a copy or 2 in Vampire lists. I've played a copy or 2 in Goblin lists, messing around in Standard. I think it could show up. Sometimes you just want another Lord effect. And this is a Lord effect that in the late game can also find you more gas. Planar Cleansing. A lot of people were talking about how Planar Cleansing might be a sweet sweeper in this format because there's so many Planeswalkers floating around. So people speculated that it would open up the gates for like a different style of control deck. And I've seen a 1 or 2 of showing up in some like really big mana type ramp style decks, but it hasn't really allowed for like a new version of control yet. At least I haven't seen it. Doesn't mean that it won't happen, but it hasn't quite happened yet. All right, folks, that's gonna do it for my M20 constructed set overview. Hopefully it wasn't too long. Hopefully I didn't put you all to sleep. A lot of sweet lists, a lot of hot technology. This is my first time doing a video of this nature. If you have any pet peeves, if you have any, well, not pet peeves, if you have some constructive feedback, I would love it. If you have constructive feedback on my constructed overview, ship it to me in the comments. Should the video be shorter? Is this long form great? Is this like a good way to approach like a set review, tackling all of the impacts on constructed? Is that too ambitious? Is it not ambitious enough? Were the deck list breakdowns good? Should I have spent more time talking about what each deck is trying to do and like spent more time assembling it? Or was it just like talking about how each card impacted that deck? Moving on to the next deck, was that strong? Let me know. Maybe I should just be doing like a top 10 video, right? People love those. It's real easy to digest. Maybe that's better. Anyway, whole lot of different ways we can go with this video series. I'm going to be doing one each time a set comes out. It should be a lot of fun. Thanks for watching, folks. And as promised, here are the rules for the giveaway if you want to win a box of M20. Yeah. Much love. Caleb D out. Catch y'all later.